Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, direct communication with children from the other side of life, with Elizabeth Boisson, President and co-founder of Helping Parents Heal. Nearly 15 years ago, Elizabeth's son, Morgan, from the other side of life, arranged for me to meet his mom and be part of a group of people that helped her to co-found Helping Parents Heal. And I so appreciate being used by the spirit world to make good things happen. You will be amazed at Elizabeth's experiences, some of them very physical communications she has had with her children from the spirit world. She also will demonstrate to you that not only is it possible to heal from grief, it is what our loved ones in spirit most want for us. And they are right here with us. You'll also hear about the book, Life to Afterlife, co-authored by Elizabeth, featured film, Life to Afterlife, which is available on Amazon Prime, and you'll meet Chelsea and Morgan, Elizabeth's two children of her four. These two are living on the other side of life. Chelsea transitioned at 2 days old in France. Morgan transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet while on a university trip. Elizabeth just seems too happy, too well adjusted to have suffered so much tragedy. But come along for this ride and find out how she became who she is and how you too can heal from grief and continue your relationships with your loved ones who are now living in the spirit world and still with you. And now, Carefree and Conscious, direct communication with children from the other side of life. Elizabeth Boisson, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm excited to be able to talk about our history, the things that have happened between the two of us.
Well, you and your son, who lives on the other side of life, Morgan, have changed my life forever. And this is year 14 of us knowing each other. And he actually helped to introduce us. And since then, you have been a co-founder of a group called Helping Parents Heal. It's helpingparentsheal.org. And you have made an significant impact in the lives of so many people. Let's start by you telling us about your children, both here on Earth and those that are living in the other side of life, and what led you into getting involved and spearheading Helping Parents Heal.
I would love to. First of all, this is really exciting to be able to be talking to you because all of my children have been affected by you for the better. But I also wanted to say that being able to have someone validate everything that I was already feeling with Morgan when he transitioned was so important to me. I'll start with Chelsea. We were living in France, and she was my second child. I already had Morgan, and she was born early at 6.5 months, but I had been in the hospital for 2 months already on an IV to keep from having contractions. And unfortunately, my water burst. I had to have Chelsea, and the gynecologist refused for me to be able to have her after my water burst until about a week later. And her lungs were crushed when she was born. And they kept her on a ventilator for 2 days, but she wasn't able to survive. The only thing that really kept me going at that point was knowing I was getting back to Morgan, because Morgan at the time was about 2 years old, and he had been living with my mother-in-law for those 2 months because my husband was very, very busy. And it was so wonderful to be able to get home to him. It was a very, very difficult time. It was a difficult thing to happen, but it was nothing like having Morgan transition 18 years later at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet. And so moving on to Morgan, he was on an exchange program in Nanjing, China, and he was at Nanjing Normal University. And he decided with 13 other students and 2 professors to go to Tibet for the vacation. There was a school vacation in October. And so they all decided to go, but it ended up that the 2 professors didn't go with them. And they landed in Lhasa at 11,000 feet. And the next day, they all got onto a bus and went up the mountain to the base camp of Mount Everest, which was about 18 or 19,000 feet high. And all of the kids who were on the bus were very, very sick. They were having symptoms of altitude sickness. Many of them were throwing up. Some of them were urinating on themselves in the bus. It was All of these were signs of altitude sickness, but unfortunately, no one recognized them, and they didn't have the professors with them to help them. They had a Chinese tour guide who was with them, who was pushing them up the mountain to be able to get to the base camp before sunset. And so by the time that Morgan got all the way up the mountain, and the whole time he was helping everybody else, he was holding people's heads when they were throwing up, and he was helping in terms of translation, because this was his second time in China. So he spoke Chinese better than any of the other kids. And he was a senior at the time. It was his first semester of his senior year. So when he got up to the top, he took a NyQuil because his head was killing him, and he went to bed. And during the night, he kept getting up and wandering around. They were in a big yurt, which is like a big tent. And the other kids were saying that he was calling them by the wrong name, which is also a sign of altitude sickness, but they didn't recognize it. And the next morning, when they were supposed to go back down the mountain at 9 in the morning, they weren't able to wake Morgan. And he was foaming at the mouth. And so one of the kids on the program, whose mother is a doctor, called his mother and asked what to do. And she said, get him down the mountain as quickly as possible. And Morgan is and was 6'6", 280 pounds. And so it took all of the kids to get him up onto the bus, loaded onto the bus. There was a little bit of oxygen in the bus, but not very much. And as they were going down the mountain, he stopped breathing. And so at that point, they decided to bring him off of the bus and attempt CPR, which is not something that they actually really knew how to do. But it was in the meantime that I got a call from the director of the program saying that that Morgan wasn't doing well. They were evacuating him. What I liked the number of his roommate, Colin, and I said, I would love to have it. Please give it to me. And I called Colin. I didn't know how bad it was, but Colin said to me, Miss Boisson, it doesn't look good. This was right when they were attempting CPR. He's on the ground. He stopped breathing, and I don't know if we're going to be able to save him. And so I told Colin to put the phone up to his ear, and I told Morgan that I loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And at that moment, I felt the biggest hug from Morgan. It was all encompassing. And I knew that love lives forever. I knew that Morgan was still with us. And in fact, I was so unafraid and so unshocked that my husband, who was sitting next to me in the office, said, "Let me speak to him." And I said, "I'm sorry, I think he's gone." And he, of course, started wailing. It was such a hard thing because he hadn't had that same experience, that incredible hug that I got from Morgan. And I've since learned that that's called a shared death experience. And I was really, really grateful to find out that other people do experience this kind of thing, because I thought that what I had experienced was very strange. But at the same time, I believed that lots of other parents probably were experiencing the same thing. So um, anyway, I I was able to help both my husband and my daughters that evening because of the fact that I knew Morgan was still with us. And I set out to find a parent support group that believed the same way that I all of a sudden believed, because it wasn't a part of my belief system before this happened. And unfortunately, all of the different groups that I was able to attend, first of all, didn't want to speak about that hug that I got from Morgan or any of the signs and validations that I was getting from him. And second of all, they they said that it was something that was not allowed in their groups. So I would spend my time in the parking lots of these different places talking to the parents, because they would come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I heard that you got a sign from your son. I'm getting signs from my kids as well." And it was very exciting. So there was a big group of people. There were lots of parents that I had already met before starting Helping Parents Heal. But I started the Facebook group a week later.
1 week, just
Yeah.
1 week after
1 week
Morgan.
after Morgan transitioned.
We picture a parent who has had a child transition, and most of the time they're a puddle, and it takes forever before they want to eat or brush their teeth or shower or anything, and you're in action mode. Do you think the shared death experience made a difference in that?
I think it was definitely the shared death experience, but I also think that it was because of the fact that Chelsea had already transitioned. And I believe that, and I've heard this from several mediums, that Chelsea was the first person to greet Morgan when he transitioned. She took his hand and led him to me so that he could hug me. And no one wants to have one child transition, much less two children transition. So it's not something that I would ever wish on anyone. But at the same time, I think it put me into a very special position of being able to feel that hug, to understand that Morgan was still with me, and to start Helping Parents Heal right away.
So you've experienced the transition of your beloved son, Morgan. Now let's get to the story of how Morgan made sure that you and I met, and then Helping Parents Heal was founded.
I was going through yoga teacher training, and I was going to become a yoga teacher. And the person who owned the studio, Angie, didn't believe in any of this, but she's a huge sweetheart and very supportive of me. And the time after Morgan transitioned, I wasn't able to go into the studio for probably 2 weeks. During that time, you showed up, and maybe you can just tell a little bit about why you showed up because it's so unusual.
It's just crazy. I had just moved here from Florida, where I had been in academia. I had been an administrative director for a center for leadership for a university, and then left that, and I was in a corporate human resources job and working on my PhD. on the weekends, but I'd had a near-death experience that made me want to refocus and just do the spiritual work. Well, we couldn't afford the huge house and the yacht and all the cars and everything if I was going to change my life. And we had some relatives here in Arizona. And so we decided, yeah, we can go live out there and I can do my spiritual thing. It's 2009, and it's like the end of the year, and I'm thinking, maybe I can find a place and rent a room. And I just walked into that yoga studio and asked, do they ever rent any of their rooms? Because it was huge and it was so beautiful, such a nice facility. And this woman, Angie, asked me to explain what I do and what I'd be using it for. Of course, she needs to know that, right? Are you a massage therapist or what do you do? And I told her, and she just gave me this look like, and I'm like, uh-oh, this is somebody that really doesn't know much about it. I'll just describe it to her and, not do too deep of a dive, but just see if this is something she even wants around. Because not everybody likes this, right? Not everybody's into mediums and talking to spirits or any of that. Her way to test me was to look around, and it was holiday time. And she said, can you read a photo? And I said, yeah. And she reached up and pulled a photo off of a Christmas card and said, what do you get off of this? And I got quite a lot. In fact, instead of doing a psychic reading, it was a spirit came in with the photo to introduce himself. And it turned out to be a photo of your kids, Morgan, who had very recently transitioned, and his sisters, all three of them there. And he walked in the door and I said, look, lady, I'm not reading a photo anymore. There's a soul here coming in. And he started to give a bunch of detail that made no sense to Angie, but she knew it was a picture of your kids, and she really carefully wrote down notes of everything I said and contacted you. So I had no idea if anything was right.
You had no idea. She had no idea either, because she didn't know these details about my life, or about Morgan's life. She knew that he passed at the base camp of Mount Everest. And I'm just going to show a picture of Morgan. It's kind of hard to see, but this is Morgan. And so he came through immediately when you were doing this reading with Angie. And what was so amazing about this is that, first of all, you talked about the fact that he was shouting from a mountain that he was okay. And through a megaphone, you said that he went like this. And I have the megaphone.
Here it is.
Yeah.
And
From
for
when
those of you who are
he was a
listening, you
teenager.
can see this on our YouTube channel at Carefree Medium.
So this megaphone was given to him at his service. It was given to us because all of the cheerleaders were there, and he was a U of A cheerleader. And so you first said that he was shouting through a megaphone, and that really, really resonated with me. You also said that there was a band of 3 brothers, and his 2 roommates, Colin and Matt, actually stayed in Lhasa to be able to wait for my husband, because it took my husband a while to get there. Even though he had a Chinese visa, he didn't have a visa for Tibet. So they were there waiting with Morgan, who was in the morgue at the time, for my husband. And they have always been so important to us, but they were his roommates. You also said that we were going to receive a rock from the place that Morgan transitioned. And you drew the rock for Angie, and you drew it with a break in the middle of the rock. So this is the exact rock that you drew. And there's absolutely no way that you could have known this, because we didn't even know about this rock. And at Christmas time, Colin brought this rock that comes from the exact spot that Morgan transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest. It was just a little bit further down, but so this is something that's really, really important to us. Um, but there were so many other validations as well. One of the things that he was shouting from the mountaintop was that he was okay, which was something that was very, very reassuring for us to hear. You talked about Captain Morgan. Everyone called Morgan Captain in school. And you even smelled rum while you were bringing him through. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm.
But there were just so many validations that you said to Angie that she was writing down as quickly as she could. And that night she called me and she said, Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to do this. I know that Morgan just passed recently, but I met with this woman at the studio and she told me all these different things. And she's a medium, and I don't know if they're true, but I wrote them all down. And can we have lunch tomorrow? And I said, Angie, I'd love to have lunch with you tomorrow, but please tell me what she said tonight. And it was amazing. The things that you had said to her were just so validating. And then after that, I tried desperately to get an appointment with you, but I wasn't able to because your husband was ill at the time. And so you weren't taking any appointments. So I started thinking, oh no, is she not wanting to speak to me because there's some issue? I'm not exactly sure why, but she's not wanting to connect. But I finally got an appointment with you in 2010, at the very beginning of 2010. And before all of that happened, maybe you can explain what happened.
It's wild, the series of events. So in January 2010, remember, I still haven't met Elizabeth, but she's gotten all this information from someone who had to check with her to see if it was real, if it was accurate. And I think that's very interesting because people will say, is the psychic medium reading the mind of the sitter? These details were not in her mind. Maybe the mountain was in her mind, but I had no names of anyone in the picture, no connection whatsoever. And I want to draw a distinction here as well between picking up some psychic information from the field around a photo and the fact that that photo was sort of like a trigger that alerted the soul, alerted Morgan that here's an opportunity. And in fact, I would posit that he set up this entire opportunity. So he's coming in. So for those that say, well, reading a photo is not evidential mediumship, he came in. This was his big opportunity, and I think he orchestrated it. So I'm pending going to meet with Elizabeth, but I've got to get out of the house. My husband's finally doing better. I saw a seminar online that was going to meet in person, and I went to it, and it was Jamie Clark and Mark Ireland. And Mark Ireland was just promoting his brand new book called Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. And Jamie Clark was teaching about psychometry and doing readings. And I stayed after and I asked Mark, I said, I'm going to meet with this woman named Elizabeth, whose son transitioned related to being on a mountain, and your son was hiking and transitioned related to hiking in the mountains. It'd be really cool if you guys could meet. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. Let's have coffee first. I'm like, okay. So I went to coffee with them. And as I told him more about what had happened at the yoga studio, Mark was very touched by that, and he ran out to his car and he said, I'm going to give you a book and I'm going to inscribe it and you give it to this woman. I want to meet her. Now Elizabeth's holding up the actual book.
This is the book. When Suzanne arrived at my home, this is the inscription that was in the book that she handed to me from Mark Ireland.
What does it say?
It says,
Do you have a date?
Yeah, it does. To Elizabeth in honor of Morgan, Mark Ireland, January 5th, 2010. So after that, Mark and I, first of all, I read this book cover to cover like in 2 days. I was so excited about it. But before we go into what happened with Mark, I would love to talk about that reading that you did for my husband and I. It's the first time we'd ever had somebody come to our house and do a reading. We didn't really know what to expect. One of the things that was very, very exciting for me at the very beginning of the reading was that you said that you saw a girl standing beside Morgan. She had dark hair and blue eyes, and she looked a little bit like Liv, is it Liv Ullmann in Lord of the Rings? Is that her name? Liv Tyler, excuse me, Liv Tyler in
Oh,
Lord of the
that's right.
And I have always imagined Chelsea looking that way because my husband is that coloring, and I thought that that was beautiful, and that she was there to meet Morgan when he transitioned. Of course, she's not 2 days old where she is right now. She's fully grown. She can be whatever age she wants to, actually, but it was such a wonderful thing to know that they are together. And the reading itself was so reassuring. I was I was so excited to know that you were able to pick up on everything that I was already experiencing. We were having the weirdest things happen in our house. Morgan was moving furniture around. He was moving traps and the ceiling around. He was moving all these different things around, and we knew it was him. But for you to come and validate all of that, one of the things you told us was to look up that day. And when you said that, the next day I was coming home from getting groceries, and it was a little warm out in the garage, and I smelled insulation, and I thought, this is weird. Where's that insulation smell coming from? And I looked up above our golf cart, which is an electric golf cart, and the trap door was completely slid back. And there's no way you can get up into there without moving the golf cart away and putting a ladder there, because the golf cart, the top of the golf cart isn't strong enough to support someone. So I thought, oh my gosh, that's the weirdest thing. And then I thought, I'm looking up. Morgan said to look up. And then Cyril sheepishly goes and he pulls the golf cart out. He turns it on, pulls it out. We put the ladder there. He puts everything back. The next day he comes home from the grocery store, and exactly the same thing happened. That same trap was slid across, and the golf cart was right there. So there's no way that that could have happened without it being influenced by Morgan, obviously.
Do you think Morgan was just trying to show you how much he could really do, or was there like a hidden message, or were you supposed to go up there?
I don't think we were supposed to go up there. I think that he was just showing us that he was so powerful, so strong still. And through all of the different signs that he sends us now, through all of the lives that he saved since he transitioned, we see that every day. But I think that that was just the start of it.
Yeah, it's foretelling all of the magnificent gifts he's going to give, which, yeah, tell us about how he inspired you to want to spend so much of your life dedicated to parents whose children have transitioned.
Well, I enjoy every single day, and I'm sure you realize that. I remember riding in the car with you. We were going to, I think we had just seen The Sound of Music, and we were going home from The Sound of Music, and this was put on by siblings of a boy who had just transitioned down at Xavier. And you turned to me and you said, I just don't get it. How is it that you are not sad and not in the same place that these other parents that I see are, and I know for sure that the reason is that, first of all, Morgan never let me be sad. Every time that I would start to feel sad, I'd get this hug from behind and I couldn't be sad anymore. And second of all, I think that it was important for me to be the person at that time to be able to tell other people that we can move forward and heal. So helping parents heal, when Mark and I actually co-founded Helping Parents Heal, because we got together after I read his book and had coffee together. This group is very different from other support groups. And that, first of all, we use different language, but second of all, we truly believe that it's possible to heal from the passing of a child. And we believe that our children really want us to heal from their passing. They don't want us to be sad. They want us to move forward. They'd like for us to do things in their name and to make them proud. And I think it might have been you who said one time in a meeting, they're kind of like dads who go to see their kids in a maternity ward, and they're looking through the window saying, "That's my son, that's my daughter." But it's, instead of that, it's, "That's my dad, that's my mom," doing the things that they're so proud of. So it's really important for me and for Mark and for everyone else who is a part of Helping Parents Heal, that parents understand that they don't have to go through the rest of their lives sad, and that they don't have to speed up their transition either. That's a really important thing, because we need to be here. We're in school and our kids are home. And we're in school for a reason. We're here to learn and to love and to help each other. And I think that as long as I can be here, whether it's until I'm 70 or 100, I will try to do the best that I can to help as many people as I can before I get over there.
Well, let's talk about the difference in the language, if you don't mind. What's so bad about the word dead when it's only talking about physical death?
Well, I don't think that that's a problem. I think that if you are talking about physical death, and especially in a more evolved kind of community, you talk about earth suits, and you talk about uh, the fact that this body is not important, and that you're graduating and you can be whatever you want to when you're over there. That's not exactly the language that is difficult. The language that's difficult for us is hearing someone say, "I lost a child," because those kids are more found than we are. They know exactly where they are. We're the ones who are lost. So that drives me crazy, because I want to say, "I had a child pass is fine," or I had a child transition is completely fine, but not lost, because they don't want to be called lost either. And also, I think that it's really important to understand that the word bereaved parent is probably one of the most difficult words, maybe the saddest in the English dictionary. So we have found a word with the help of Suzanne Giesman in meditation to describe what we feel we are, which is shining light parents. And we're not saying that we're shining light parents, that we're happy all the time and that we're bright and cheerful all the time. We're saying that the light of our children shines through us, and that is what pushes us forward. So using the word bereaved, using the word lost, using the phrase "rest in peace" is something that really bothers a lot of our members.
To me, that's nails on the chalkboard. Rest in peace. They're not resting, they're having a fabulous life.
They're having so much more fun than we are here. And I think that once parents understand that their kids are having a blast, and not only that, this is another thing that's different from a lot of other groups. We believe all of our kids are together. They are welcoming each other, they're helping each other, they're showing each other the ropes, they're showing each other how to communicate with their parents as well, how they can connect with their parents. And I think that that is something that is very, very helpful to all of us, to know that every single time a child transitions, I tell Morgan, hey, Chelsea, go find that child and welcome them. And I know that they will. And another thing is that I've learned from you and from many others, that our kids can be in many places at the same time. So it's not as though we're making their lives difficult by forcing them to go and welcome these kids. They can exist in many different places and be doing many different things as well. But I think that the other thing that sets us apart from other bereavement support groups, and I don't like calling it that, but that's pretty much what we usually say is support group. And if people ask what the support group is for, we'll explain that it's for the passing of one or more children. But is the fact that we want to help parents to connect with their children in spirit. So that could be through a medium, it could be through you, it could be the same experience that I was so grateful to have at the very beginning. It could also be through learning tools on our own to be able to do so. And one of the biggest things that I think is very important in the very beginning is to slow down the monkey mind and meditate if possible. I wasn't able to do that in the beginning. And so to slow down my mind, instead of doing meditation, I was doing moving meditation. So I was climbing every mountain to the top of the mountain of every mountain around here. And it could be vacuum cleaning. If you're vacuum cleaning, it's a moving meditation. It's not as great as being outside. You could be doing forest bathing as well. So getting out into the forest, taking your shoes off, being able to feel at one with nature. There are so many different ways to start. And then once you've started along the path, there are different things like automatic writing. There's also, obviously, you could do more intense forms of connecting, such as doing yoga and things like that. You could also start cutting out some of the red meat in your diet and make it a little easier to raise your vibration. And these are all things that you know better than I do, but all of these things are very, very important to parents, of helping parents heal. And if they aren't important in the very beginning, they learn that it's something that really does work, and so they continue with it.
Well, what does healed grief look like? And I say this because there are grief educators and counselors that say grief never goes away. Certain kinds of grief and certain circumstances, it will never go away. It will never heal, but you'll learn to get through it, and you'll learn to how to put one foot in front of another. But you're telling us from experience that grief can be healed. It doesn't mean you stop missing your loved one, but what does that look like?
Well, first of all, I feel like Morgan's with me every step of the way. I feel that Chelsea is as well. And that's something that I think when people are saying that they can't heal, it's because they have a lot of people saying you have to move past this and you have to forget and you have to do things that we aren't supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be including them in everything that we do. Second of all, I think that being able to understand that that this is what they want more than anything in the world. They are our biggest cheerleaders. They want us to move forward and heal. But it doesn't mean that we have to do so right away, because even if we are hurting, it doesn't hurt them. They never ever feel sad because of the fact that we may be sad. They just know that we would be happier if we weren't in this deep grief. I think that that is probably what a lot of people are worried about. By letting go of the grief, of the hurt, they're going to let go of their child. And I am 100% sure and certain that it's completely the opposite. The more that you move forward with your children in spirit, the happier that you are. And I also just want to say, and this might be a little hard for some people who are early on in the journey, but there are so many people in Helping Parents Heal who almost feel that having a child transition is almost like a gift. And that sounds horrific, just saying it that way. But I know that there are so many people, I guess we talk about collateral beauty that we find from what happens. I've learned so much on this journey. I've met you, I've met some incredible people along the way, and I haven't ever left Morgan behind. I haven't ever left Chelsea behind. And I know that they are bringing these fabulous people into my life. And just like what happened at the yoga studio, I know it was him. And to go a little bit further in that thought, my daughter, I mean, I've told these stories before, and I think that they're kind of important. My daughter was studying in Paris several years ago, and she was at Sciences Po, and she had gone to a New Year's party, and she was with her cousin and her cousin's boyfriend, and she had taken a migraine medication right before she went. And then she had a glass of wine and she really felt woozy and she wanted to go home. But she was across Paris. She had no idea where she was. And she had a little black cocktail dress on, no sleeves. She had put her coat and her purse at the check-in place. She ran out and she went first to tell Anne-Sophie that she was leaving. And Anne-Sophie said, "Oh, go, that's fine, no problem." She ran out into the street, found a taxi, jumped into it. And then a block later, she realized she didn't recognize the person who was in the back seat with her. So she thought, "Oh, I better get out of here." She looked up at the street sign. She had no money. She didn't have her purse. She had this little dress on, and it started snowing. And she did not recognize the street sign.
Oh boy, this just sounds horrible.
And so the next thing that she remembers is her roommates trying to wake her up at 9 o'clock the next morning. And they said, "We're going to Portugal. We're going to miss the train." And Alix had no idea of what happened, but she knew that Morgan brought her home. They are 7 flights up, and one of her roommates heard the door kick in at 3 in the morning. She was in her bed. Everything was fine. And she said, "The only thing, Mom, that I could ever imagine is that Morgan got me home safely." So
They hurt him bringing her home.
yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was one thing. And then another thing that happened, it was with a firefighter who was Morgan's very close friend as a cheerleader. He was the mascot. So he was Wilbur Wildcat. And then he became a firefighter on the first job that he was doing. He was in Peoria. And he and another firefighter were trying to get a car out of the garage. The other firefighter was driving the car and he was going to be pushing it. It was in neutral. All of a sudden, he felt something pull him from behind with two arms that just came around him, pulled him off his feet and then backwards. And at that same moment, an air conditioning unit fell from the ceiling that would have killed him. And so the driver or the firefighter who was in the car said, "Dude, what just happened?" He couldn't believe it. And these kinds of things, I would say that I've heard stories like this at least 5 times, maybe 6. And I have a feeling that there are other things that have happened that kids just are too nervous to tell me because it's so strange sounding. But I feel very fortunate to know how strong they are. They are so strong on the other side. They only want us to move forward and heal. They only want love in this world. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other things going on, and our world is getting more and more complicated. But being able to stick to love as the guiding principle in life is something that I feel very grateful for.
So if we go back just to kind of loop this together, Morgan years earlier had demonstrated that he was physically powerful by opening up that attic space with no visible means of being able to get a ladder in there, past the golf cart, sliding this door open, doing it 2 days in a row just to drive the point across. It's like he's setting you up so that later on, when he does these miraculous things, you're like, oh, yeah, of course.
That was Morgan.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. What do you say to a parent who says, well, I'm not sure if I am relieved or jealous that they're having such a good time on the other side? Don't they miss me at all? What's your response to something like that? And I've heard that comment many times.
You know, it's very interesting because I was sitting with a group of moms and with a medium, and we were having tea. And the medium sees only spirit. She doesn't see people. She sees their auras, but she doesn't see people. So she really saw the kids. She saw them playing together, and she was saying to the two moms, "Oh, they're telling fart jokes to each other." And the moms were like, one was laughing hysterically. The other one was saying, wait a second, isn't he just combing my hair and touching my head? Isn't that what he's doing? And this medium said, no, he doesn't change his personality just because he's on the other side. He's the same person, and he's the same prankster, and he's the same, but there's only love over there. So I I just think that that's a beautiful way to explain it, that no, I don't think that we should be jealous, because they are, they're the same, and they're staying with us. They can feel our hugs. So they can feel us. They can come and hug us. We don't necessarily feel them, but they're not missing out on anything physically that we are missing out on. And if we work towards being able to feel that hug and being able to write the automatic writing things that our kids are saying, then we can feel even more connected to them.
Oh my gosh, that's lovely. Thank you for making that point. Can you tell everybody about the conference, the book, the films that can be enjoyed? And I have to mention that just today I talked to a woman I was doing a one-on-one session with on Zoom, and she said, "I'm not a bereaved parent, but I watch all of your YouTube videos."
Oh.
Because they're so helpful to me. But tell us how people can interact with helping parents heal.
Well, I would love to. So we do have about 23 meetings a week now, and I send out a newsletter so that people are able to see some of them. A lot of the meetings that we have are affiliate meetings that happen throughout the country and throughout the world. But we also have a great recommended reading list. And if you could hold up that beautiful book that you just brought. It's on the list, and I feel very fortunate to be in this book. The books have to be helpful, hopeful, and healing, as Susanne Wilson always says. Everything in the afterlife, anything talking about the afterlife, has to be helpful, hopeful, and healing. And it also has to be non-dogmatic. So it can't be based on any certain religion. It also has to be, let's see, so uplifting is one of the things. And we have a group of readers who read the books before we put them onto the book list. So there's books by providers, books by parents, books in Spanish, books in Norwegian, books for children as well. And currently we also have 34 caring listeners, and 12 of them speak different languages. So we have Norwegian speaking, Swedish speaking, Cantonese, Mandarin, Italian, Spanish, French. I'm trying to think of the other dialects that we have. Oh, Hindi, of course. And I'm going to be missing some of them. But if anyone needs to be able to have what we call a heart with ears to speak to, they are free of charge. They're volunteers, and they love to be able to speak to parents. We also have the book that just came out a couple of years ago about helping parents heal, that was based on the documentary by Craig McMahon. And you were in the documentary, and you were also in several other documentaries with Craig McMahon. But this is just 20 parents from Helping Parents Heal who explain how they've moved forward and healed. And the conference is going to be amazing. And Susanne is going to be one of our keynote speakers. We're going to be having the conference from the 22nd to the 25th of August. So it's about the same time period as last time. Our Facebook group is where we post all of our upcoming meetings, and we have to do that so that it stays confidential. I'm very excited about the conference, and especially since you're going to be there. And we also, as I said, have a monthly newsletter, and I include validation stories from parents in the newsletter, which are very important. And then there are a lot of different resources that people are able to access, and almost everything is free of charge. So thank you for asking.
Amazing. It costs nothing to join on Facebook. Is that correct?
Nothing to join on Facebook, and most of our meetings are free of charge as well. The gallery readings now are $11.11 per person, because of the fact that we had to cover our insurance, and we're putting money together for scholarships for the conference. Last conference, I think we gave away 110 scholarships out of 900. Thanks to you, because you got together an enormous amount of money for the scholarships, as well as to other donors. This time we're hoping to give more. And so the scholarships are very important to a lot of the parents who are coming.
Fantastic. And there's one more thing I got to make sure to not leave out. There are specialty groups within your purview also. Like there's a special group just for the dads.
There's a special group for the dads that's extremely active, because dads heal differently than moms do. And in fact, they're going to be publishing their own book similar to this one, but just about dads healing, which is going to be wonderful. It'll be ready for the conference. We have specialty groups for all different kinds of, we have moving forward after suicide. We also have substance use. We also have parents of toddlers, infants, and young children. And it's not because we think that the transition is any different, the exit point is any different. It's because of the fact that parents like to be able to be in a group with people who understand the way that people here on Earth are maybe talking to them, and things that they're experiencing that maybe other groups of people wouldn't be experiencing. And so we do have all of those. We're now in Canada, the United States, Brazil, Mexico, the United Kingdom, Norway, Sweden, let's see, South Africa, India, New Zealand, and Australia.
And I can remember being at a very early meeting with maybe about 50 people 13 years ago, 14 years ago, and saying the kids are unanimous this is going to be a global force for healing. And I can remember in that moment of chill going through me and looking out and everybody going, oh, like that. Cause like everyone there, I think, felt it. That just resonated. It is so true. So I want to ask you, what would you like to leave us with today? But one more thing first, how have your personal beliefs about the afterlife evolved, or have they changed since Morgan passed and everything that transpired?
Definitely. I think that before Morgan transitioned, I was open to all religions because I'd lived in India for about 5 years, and I um, I think that the Eastern religions embrace reincarnation and a lot of the other things that we talk about in the afterlife community. But I never really thought about it before. It wasn't something that really concerned me. And in fact, when my mom would go to a medium um, in New Delhi or go to Old Delhi and go up these staircases in the back to find out about her future, I didn't want to know anything about my future. That wasn't something that even interests me. But I am 100% sure that as soon as someone has a child transition or even a very close loved one, we start wanting to learn much more. And so the first year, I think I read at least 85 books about the afterlife. I started immediately with Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody and just kept going. And I think that it's rather exciting because it's not something that um, you feel you have time for. You kind of think, why would I be needing this? And then all of the sudden you do need it, and it helps you to communicate with your loved one in spirit.
That's a big change. You were open, but you didn't have a real specific belief about what happens after death. And now it's not a belief anymore. It's a knowing for you, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And no, I didn't necessarily believe in mediums either. I didn't not believe in mediums. And I think that one thing that's changed about me is that I will never, ever not believe anything that I hear, because I think there's always a possibility that everything that we hear could actually be true. So we won't know until we get over to the other side, but I'm completely open to everything now.
Love that. And what would you like to leave listeners with? A final thought.
You. Well, I think that it's really, really important, especially if any of you are early on this journey, to understand that I may sound a little flippant. I may sound like I'm a little too happy, but I do believe that everyone is able to move forward and heal. And that's our number one goal in helping parents heal, is to show others how they can do this. But they don't have to believe that way to join Helping Parents Heal. You don't have to be someone who feels a connection with your child in spirit. But I can guarantee you, if you stay with us for a while, you probably will get that connection. I am just so grateful to be able to be working for these kids, because it's all about the kids. I have nothing to do with it. It's just them.
Thank you for sharing your light, Chelsea's light, Morgan's light, and for the light that all of you together are bringing to the world. Elizabeth Veney Boisson, thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It was such a wonderful thing to be able to speak to you today, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media at Carefree Medium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.